Welcome to a story that will haunt you, teach you, and set you free. Are you ready to learn English through a mystery so gripping it feels real? Then listen closely. In a world where silence is enforced, where identities vanish behind numbered doors, and one woman holds the secret to unlock it all, this is not just a thriller, it's a mirror, a reflection of strength, survival, and speaking truth when no one dares. Sweet 11 was meant to erase her, but she became the voice they couldn't silence Dot as. You follow her journey, sentence by sentence, word by word. You won't just improve your English. You'll uncover what it means to fight back when the world wants you gone. So sit back, press play, and step into the shadows, because the woman in Sweet 11 is not just a story. It's your next obsession. Let us begin. The rain was falling like a curtain pulled across the city. Heavy, constant, and cold. It was the kind of weather that made even the busiest streets look deserted. The kind that soaked through your shoes and into your soul. Lakeside Grand Hotel stood like a quiet sentinel against the storm. Lights glowing in the fog like whispers in the dark. Its marble lobby was warm, polished, and calm. But the real story didn't begin at the front desk or even in the grand hall. It began 4 floors up, at a door marked with brass, Sweet 11. No one saw her arrive. Not the bellboy, not the cameras at the front entrance, not even the doorman. But at 9:17 p.m., the elevator beeped quietly on the 4th floor. The doors opened. A woman stepped out. She was dressed in black coat, black boots, black gloves. Her face was calm, unreadable, not beautiful in a way that drew attention, but striking in a way that made it impossible to forget her once you noticed. She carried no luggage, no purse, no phone in hand, only a white envelope, sealed, clutched tightly like it mattered more than anything in the world. The hallway was empty. The carpet muffled her steps as she moved with precision, not like a guest looking for her room, but like someone who had been there before, like someone who belonged. She didn't look left or right, didn't pause, didn't hesitate. When she reached Sweet 11, the door was already open, not wide, just slightly ajar, enough to be an invitation or a warning. She pushed it gently and stepped inside. The room was silent, the lights were off, but the curtains were open, letting in the soft glow of the streetlights below. The rain cast moving shadows on the walls, like ghosts trying to escape. The air smelled faintly of lavender and cold steel. On the table, there was a suitcase, closed, locked, sitting perfectly at the center, as if placed there with intention. She didn't move toward it, not yet. Instead, she walked slowly to the far wall, where a mirror stood framed in dark wood. She looked at her own reflection not with fear, not with vanity, but with a strange kind of distance, as if she were studying someone else, someone she didn't entirely recognize anymore. From her coat pocket, she pulled out a small recording device. She clicked it on, a faint beep, a soft click. Then she pressed play. A man's voice spoke, calm, precise, cold. You're late. You only get one chance. Make the drop or walk away forever. Her fingers curled slightly at the message. She didn't answer. She didn't speak. But in her eyes, something shifted like a storm, beginning to build behind her calm exterior. She walked to the table, the suitcase before her now. It was black, unmarked, with no tags, no stickers, no sign of where it came from or who it belonged to. The lock clicked open at her touch, no code, no key, just a press in the right spot, as if it knew her. Inside, there were no documents, no weapons, no money. Just a single photo. She lifted it slowly. It was her, taken 2 days ago. She was smiling, her hair loose, caught in sunlight, her eyes softer than they were now. And in the picture, she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, holding her hand. His face was gentle, almost forgettable. But his presence was everything. He was missing. No one had reported it. No one even noticed. But she knew. He was gone, taken, because of her, or for her, or to use against her. A knock at the door, not loud, just 2 short taps, then silence. She didn't panic, didn't run. She simply reached into her coat, pulled out a pen, and turned the photo over. Her hand didn't shake. Her writing was fast, direct. 3 words: he is innocent. She placed the photo back in the suitcase, closed it, locked it again. The knock came. Once more, louder this time. She walked to the door and stopped just inches away, listening. Downstairs, in a small surveillance room near the kitchen, Agent Mark Rayner was watching her every move. Cameras hidden in vents, in ceiling corners, behind picture frames. He saw the photo. He saw her face, and for a moment, he hesitated. 3 months. That's how long he'd been chasing her. Through 4 cities, under 3 different names. She left no digital trail, no fingerprints, no friends, just stories, rumors, disappearances. And this hotel, the Lakeside Grand, was her only constant. He pressed a button on his headset. Alpha Unit, move in. We have visual confirmation. Room 11, move now. The command echoed through the earpieces of 3 men in black suits moving swiftly up the stairwell. But she wasn't waiting. She walked calmly to the window. Rain slid down the glass in long streaks. Below, the alley was empty. No fire escape. No ledge. And yet, by the time Alpha Unit burst through the door, guns raised, eyes sharp, the room was empty. No woman. No suitcase. No open door. Just silence and the faint sound of the rain. Agent Rayner stood in the center of the room. Something wasn't right. He walked to the table. The suitcase was gone. The mirror was fogged, as if someone had stood before it, breathing. But the window was locked. The door hadn't been touched. He checked the camera feed again. Blank. Static. Black screen. She was gone. And in her place, on the edge of the bed, was the white envelope she had carried in. He opened it. Inside nothing except 1 small slip of paper, a date, a time, and a new hotel name. She was still playing the game, and he was already behind. Back in the rain, far from the hotel, the woman walked under a black umbrella, blending into the crowd, her face calm again, her coat soaked at the edges, the world around her unaware of what had just happened. She didn't smile, didn't speak, but in her eyes burned a fire that couldn't be drowned. The night had only begun. The storm hadn't stopped. In fact, it had grown stronger, as if nature itself was reacting to something unnatural happening beneath its sky. Inside the hotel, warmth and silence coated the halls like a lie, clean and polished, hiding everything dark underneath. But she wasn't fooled by silence. She had lived too long in shadows to trust the quiet. The woman in black had vanished from Suite 11, but she hadn't disappeared. She had moved with purpose. Every step she took now, outside the walls of that hotel, was a message to someone watching, to someone who thought they had control. She walked alone through the streets, where puddles mirrored the city lights like shattered stars. Every reflection felt like an eye. Every eye felt like a threat. She stopped near a cafe closed for the night, its windows covered with old posters and raindrops. A young man passed by her, talking on his phone, not noticing her at all. That was the way she liked it, invisible in plain sight. She reached inside her coat again, not for a weapon, not for the photo, but for something else. A second envelope. It was thinner, older, and had been sealed years ago. The edges were worn, almost soft, like it had been handled many times before. She ran her gloved thumb along the crease and pulled it open. Inside was a small silver key, cold, familiar, and heavy with memory, and a card. A room number. Not Suite 11 this time. Room 205. Another hotel, another city, another test. Every move she made was designed, planned, not by her, but by someone else, a game she had once been forced to play, now using their rules against them. Suite 11 wasn't the beginning. It was just a step, one signal in a line of signals. They thought she had broken protocol. They thought she was losing her edge. They were wrong. Her fingers closed around the key. Across the city, in a high-rise office with tinted windows, a man sat behind 5 computer screens. Surveillance feeds flickered on each one, showing different angles of hotels, airports, train stations. One screen blinked to static. Another zoomed in on a woman in black walking under an umbrella. He leaned forward, studying her pace, her posture. She's delivering messages, he muttered, not just surviving. She's telling us something. Beside him, another man, older, colder, shook his head. She's rogue. She's broken protocol. We have to shut her down. But the man at the screens didn't respond because he noticed something strange. She passed a camera, didn't look up, didn't pause, but in the frame just for a moment her hand moved to fingers. A signal, deliberate, specific, a number. 3. She was sending them a number. What did it mean? Back in the street, the woman stepped into an alleyway and paused under a broken light. From her coat, she pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, an old photograph. Not the one from Suite 11. A different one, a darker one. It showed 3 people, herself, the missing man, and one other face, blurred, but familiar. It was taken 5 years ago, the last time she had been someone else, the last time she had smiled for real. She folded it back carefully, placed it in a hidden pocket, and stepped into the back entrance of a small building. The stairs creaked under her boots as she climbed to flights. Room 205 was at the end of the hall, the wallpaper peeling, the light above it flickering. She inserted the silver key. The lock turned. Inside was nothing, just a single chair and a phone. Ringing. She closed the door behind her and picked it up on the first ring. No voice, just silence, then a click, then a whisper. You left a message, now here's ours. A pause, then 3 words. She's watching you. Her breath caught, just for a second. She turned toward the mirror in the room, cracked, faintly fogged. Behind the glass, barely visible, was the outline of a camera. They weren't just watching, they were already there. The game had shifted, and now someone else was moving the pieces. She walked to the window, opened it slowly, a rain on her face. The world below waiting. She didn't jump. She didn't run. She pulled out a match, struck it against the wall. The envelope, the photo, the card, all of it, into the flame, gone. She turned once more to the empty chair and whispered, "You're late." And then she disappeared again. She stood at the edge of the rooftop, motionless against the gray horizon. Rain kissed her face like memories, soft, cold, and dangerous. The city below buzzed with artificial life, blind to what truly mattered. Somewhere in those glowing towers, someone thought they had won, that she was finished. But the woman from Suite 11 wasn't done. She was only just beginning. In her hand was a small object wrapped in cloth, an old recorder, not digital, analog. The kind that clicked when it started and whirred when it stopped. She pressed play. The voice on the tape was muffled, shaky. They lied to you. All of them. Suite 11 was never a sanctuary. It was a setup. The voice paused, crackled. You have 3 days. She rewound the tape and played it again. Not because she needed to hear the words, but because she needed to hear the tone. The fear in the voice. Not her fear, his. The man who had once trained her, the man who had betrayed her. She didn't need names. She had the rhythm of betrayal memorized. She turned from the edge and walked back toward the stairwell. Her coat clung to her as the wind fought to keep her there, but she moved forward. Like always, down the stairs, into the alley, past the false reflections of neon and lies. She had learned something back in Suite 11. A small detail. A smell in the room like old cigar smoke and rose water. It shouldn't have been there. The man in the photograph never smoked, and he hated perfume. That meant one thing. Someone else had been in the room. After she left, they were cleaning up behind her, rewriting her story, making it look like she'd gone mad. The news had already run a story. Unidentified woman leaves cryptic message. Vanishes from Suite 11. A reporter with a crooked tie claims she was mentally unstable. Said she had been seen talking to herself in the hallway. Said she left behind only a single black glove. She smiled bitterly as she walked past a newsstand, where the headline shouted in bold red font, "Mystery Woman, Terrorist OR Traumatized." They always tried to reduce dangerous women into one of two categories: mad or monstrous. Never intelligent, never in control. But she wasn't either of their boxes. She was the fire that came after silence. At the bus station, she sat on a bench, beside an old man reading a book. He looked at her briefly, nodded, and returned to his page. No one else noticed her. That's what made her unstoppable. She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her boot. It wasn't just paper, it was a map, hand-drawn, marked with 3 red X's. One had already been crossed out, Suite 11. The second X pointed to an old observatory outside the city, abandoned, forgotten. She traced the path with her finger. That's where the second message was hidden. She boarded the bus, sat by the window. Her reflection in the glass didn't smile back, it stared. Cold, focused, a storm wrapped in silence. Behind her, someone sat 2 rows away, a woman. Blonde hair, yellow coat, harmless at first glance, but the woman in black saw everything. The way she shifted her weight, the way her eyes flicked to every mirror on the ceiling of the bus, the way her hand rested close to her purse but never in it. She was watching, maybe following, maybe protecting. Either way, she was part of the game. The woman in black closed her eyes not to sleep, but to listen. The engine, the rain, the pulse of the city, the voice in her head, whispering the words that began this all. Suite 11 is just a door. Behind it, your truth or your trap. Now, she was moving toward the second door, and she was ready. The observatory stood like a skeleton from another world, its dome cracked, its telescope rusted and blind. Nature had tried to reclaim it, but something darker still held it in place. The woman from Suite 11 stepped over the chained gate, her boots crunching over broken glass and fallen leaves. This place didn't want visitors. It wanted to be forgotten. But forgotten places are where truth hides best. She moved silently, each breath measured. Her coat now dry, but her resolve drenched in storm. She knew this ground not by memory, but by instinct. The observatory had once belonged to the Institute, the same nameless organization that trained her to disappear, to decode, to destroy. The second X on her map wasn't just a location, it was a trap, and she walked into it willingly. Inside, dust hung in the air like suspended lies. A single red wire ran from under the control console to a box half buried beneath the floor tiles. She knelt, pulled back the metal panel, and lifted the box with both hands. No lock inside it. A cassette. The same kind as before. This time, the voice was female, steady, calculated. You found the second key. That means you're still alive. That means you're not afraid of shadows anymore. The voice paused, then a long sigh. I left Suite 11 before you did. They were coming for me, too. You were never their first experiment, just the most dangerous one to survive. She stopped the tape, not because she was afraid, but because she understood. This was personal. She stood and looked through the broken lens of the telescope, out at the forest beyond. Somewhere in that darkness was the final X, but she wasn't ready for it yet, because someone had been here recently. A coffee cup, still warm, a jacket hung on the back of a chair, a camera with the red light blinking recording. Watching, she walked over to it, took out the tape, crushed it in her hand. Let them know she was here. Let them feel her breath on their neck again. She was done hiding. She turned to leave, and that's when she heard it, a voice behind her. Not from a tape, a man, real, present. You weren't supposed to make it this far. She didn't flinch. I wasn't supposed to make it out of Suite 11 either, she said. Turning slowly, the man stepped into view. Clean suit, no tie, surgical scars just beneath his collar. He looked like control, like secrets kept in vaults. They'll come for you now, he said. All of them. She smiled. Let them. I'm done waiting for permission. He moved to draw something from his coat, but she was faster. Her hand reached for the pen in her boot, modified, sharpened, deadly. One step forward, that's all she needed. But the man raised both hands. I didn't come to kill you, he said. I came to warn you. Now she flinched, not because she believed him, but because the voice matched the first tape. You were the one who said I had 3 days. I lied. He replied, you only have one. The third X is a countdown. When the clock hits 0, everything you know disappears. She stared at him, and then she ran. Not because of fear, but because time was now chasing her. The final X on her map wasn't just a place. It was the end of her past, or the beginning of her revenge. And the woman from Suite 11 was not going to let her story be erased. The train yard was asleep under a sickle moon. Every track a frozen memory, every rail humming with silence. Somewhere between cart 187 and the forgotten maintenance shed, she crouched, watching, waiting. The final X on her map wasn't just marked in red ink. It pulsed in her veins like unfinished business. The woman from Suite 11 didn't just follow the map, she bled for it. This place had once moved goods, secrets, people. But now it moved only ghosts. Her breath turned to mist as she held still, her gloved fingers brushing the cold steel of the lockbox hidden beneath the freight car. She'd found it, the final cache. But she wasn't alone. A click behind her, not a gun. A lighter, the Manon. The gray coat was back, his cigarette burning like the last match in a storm. He exhaled slowly, the smoke curling into the shape of betrayal. I warned you, he said. You kept coming. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. You kept watching, she replied. From Suite 11 to here, you've been pulling the strings. He stepped closer, his footsteps echoing like guilt. Because you were never meant to escape. You were the experiment that wrote its own ending. Now she turned, eyes like blades, voice like gravel. Then this is the last chapter. She opened the lockbox and found not a weapon, not a file, but a mirror, cracked, dirty, old. On the rim was an inscription in Latin. She didn't need to translate it. She remembered it from the facility. It was the motto etched above her bed in Suite 11. She who sees herself clearly cannot be controlled. Suddenly, it clicked. The map wasn't to find others. It was to find herself. Every location a memory. Every cassette a part of her truth. Every face she'd encountered a reflection of the people who built her and tried to break her. The man took a step back now, uncertain, because he saw it in her eyes. She remembered everything. The room, the screams, the injections, the training, the moment she chose to forget in order to survive. And now, she didn't need revenge. She needed freedom. And freedom required one last step. She raised the mirror slowly, not to look at herself but to show him. What do you see? She asked. He laughed. A girl pretending to be strong. She shook her head. No. You see your creation, But I see your mistake." With that, she threw the mirror to the ground, shattering the last chain of her conditioning. And the echo that followed was more than sound, it was a signal, a click, from the freight car behind him. Then darkness bloomed into light. Flashbang. Smoke. The sound of boots on steel. Voices shouting. She didn't wait. She knew the plan because she wrote it. 2 agents in black grabbed the man. Another tossed her a small device. She caught it midair, clipped it to her belt. Extraction successful. "Welcome back," a voice said in her earpiece. She didn't answer. She walked away from the chaos, the burning map, the broken glass. No more tapes. No more riddles. The woman from Suite 11 was done being hunted. Now she was the storm. ChatGPT said. Rain hammered the city like it was trying to erase it. Every window was smeared with streaks of gray, every alley a blurred sketch in charcoal and water. The city breathed in fear and exhaled silence. But not her. The woman from Suite 11 moved through the storm like she belonged to it. Her boots hit the concrete with rhythm, not haste. Her coat clung to her shoulders like armor. The bruises from the last mission still ached. But she didn't slow down. Pain had long ago stopped being a warning. It had become her compass. And tonight, it pointed straight to the heart of the tower on 6th and Marlowe. She'd learned the truth behind the map. She'd unlocked her mind. But now she had to shut the system down. The tower wasn't a place, it was the pulse of the whole operation. The files stored there could expose not only the ones who experimented on her, but everyone complicit. Doctors, politicians, sponsors, a whole hidden network of manipulators playing gods with real people. Suite 11 was never a room. It was a prototype, and she was the one who lived. The keycard was wet in her hand as she slipped into the service elevator. The hum of the floor numbers counting up was like a ticking bomb inside her. She didn't rehearse what she would say. She wasn't here to speak. She was here to end it. Floor 39, records department. No security. That was the bait. She stepped out, and immediately the air changed. Thicker, tighter. Then she saw them. 3 guards, suits, guns, eyes that didn't blink. "Don't do this," one said. "You were given a second chance." She kept walking. "You were supposed to forget." She reached into her pocket and held up the small black cube, the decrypted core. "From the last facility." "Exactly," she said. "But I didn't." The cube glowed, reacting to the room's sensors. Every light flickered. Every screen went black. And then, in rapid flashes, the truth began to show. Images, names, video feeds, screams, experiments, hidden floors, locked cells, the horrors of Project Eve laid bare for the world. "You can't stop this now," she whispered. "The world's already watching." The guards hesitated, and she walked right past them, into the mainframe chamber. Alarms wailed, but she was calm. She reached the control panel, slid the cube into the port. The system recognized her because it was built for her. "Voice match confirmed," said the computer. "Welcome back, Subject 11. "No," she said. "I'm not your subject anymore." The screen asked. "Confirm." "Full data release." She didn't blink. She didn't pause. She pressed yes. Across the world, terminals exploded with files. Phones lit up. Newsrooms froze. The truth was out. The victims had names. The guilty had faces. And the woman from Suite 11 had given them a voice. The room behind her flooded with chaos. But she just turned and walked toward the exit. The guards didn't follow. They knew that it was over. As the elevator doors closed, her reflection stared back at her. Not a weapon, not a project, a survivor. A storm. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe. The night was quieter than usual, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The neon signs had stopped flickering. Even the dogs had stopped barking. but inside the cold glass tower on the edge of the district, war had already begun, not with bullets or blood, but with silence, truth, and exposure. She stood alone in the archive corridor beneath the tower. The concrete smelled like old data and forgotten screams. Flickering fluorescent lights overhead cast her shadow in sharp angles, and in her hand was the last encrypted drive, the final proof that could collapse the empire built on human testing, mind reprogramming, and forced identity resets. They called her a ghost, but she was very much alive. And the truth was no longer a secret. As she walked deeper into the core archive chamber, every step echoed with memories, not just hers, but those of others like her. She could still see their eyes in her dreams, faces without names, souls erased and rewritten, all part of a twisted experiment to build the perfect, obedient mind. Sweet 11 was just one of many, but she had broken the cycle, not through rage, not through revenge, but through awareness. What they didn't expect, what they could never simulate, was resilience. Somewhere along the endless rewrites, the real version of her had survived. Beneath the fabricated memories, beneath the psychological implants and emotional suppressants, her spirit endured. And now that spirit had a mission. The screen on the wall blinked alive, scanning her iris. Authorization accepted. Data vault access granted. The door slid open with a hiss like a dying machine. Inside was a clean, sterile chamber. Dozens of black servers hummed in unison, the heartbeat of the experiment. She approached the core unit, connected the drive, and waited. On the screen, lines of code began to spill, then the files, each folder named with numbers. Test subjects, videos, audio recordings, psychological maps, behavioral logs, one by one. The horrors unraveled. A voice behind her said, "You don't have to do this. You'll make enemies you can't see." She didn't turn around. She replied, "They made me an enemy the day they erased my name." And with that, she hit transfer all. In minutes, the data was copied, backed up, sent to independent networks, investigative journalists, human rights agencies. There would be no stopping it now. Truth is like fire. Once it spreads, no one walks away clean. Alarms started again. Red lights flashed. The system realized it was being taken apart from the inside. Security was being scrambled, but she didn't run. She stood there and watched. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's just one woman standing in the heart of the monster, silent, unflinching, and free. As she left the chamber, smoke began to rise from the server room. The failsafe protocol was kicking in. Wipe the evidence, burn it all, erase every last trace. But they were too late. She had already become the trace, not just of pain, but of resistance, not just of survival, but of redemption. Outside, the storm had cleared. The moon was full, watching everything in quiet approval. She stepped into the night, her coat catching the wind, and disappeared into the city she had just saved, not by fighting, but by remembering. And now, the world would remember too. The train station was almost empty at that hour, just the low rumble of distant engines. A flickering information board, and a woman in a long gray coat standing at platform 7. Her suitcase looked ordinary, but inside it wasn't clothes or documents. It was a story, a truth, a weapon. Sweet 11 was gone now. The building had been cleared, the archives destroyed. The officials dismissed it all as a malfunction, a data breach, a tragic miscommunication. But some knew better, and some were watching. She had chosen not to run, not to hide, but to move, to let the truth follow her like a shadow, appearing wherever light was needed most. As the train approached, the ground trembled softly. She didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her eyes and remembered the woman she used to be, erased, The name she once had stolen, the pain they thought would break her endured. The system had tried to turn her into a file, a folder, a number. They gave her a room with no windows and a schedule with no dreams. But inside that hollow silence, she heard something louder than orders, her own voice returning. She had written it back into her soul. Now, every step she took was a chapter, every station a paragraph, every glance from a stranger a sentence in the book she was now writing with her life. As she boarded the train, she saw reflections in the windows, not just her own, but glimpses of others, the girl in the corner, clutching a torn photograph, the old man reading an old headline, the security guard with questions in his eyes. They were all passengers of hidden pain, all searching. She didn't need to say a word. The drive she carried had already whispered to the world. A podcast host picked up the signal in Berlin. A law student translated it in Lahore. A hacker reposted it from a rooftop in Mexico City. It was out now, in fragments, in truth, in fire. The experiment was no longer a secret. It was a warning. The truth was not just about her anymore. It was about them. All the ones who had been rewritten, silenced, sold, or lost. Sweet 11 was a code name. But now it was a symbol. Of what happens when you try to control the human soul. And what happens when that soul decides to fight back? The train pulled away, headlights slicing through the night. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her story wasn't behind her anymore. It was ahead. Somewhere, someone would hear it and wake up. Somewhere, someone would find courage in her silence. Somewhere, the system would tremble again, not because of a bomb or a broadcast, but because a single woman survived what was meant to erase her. And she did more than survive. She spoke. Not through speeches or slogans, but by being. By standing. By refusing to disappear. The train moved forward. So did she. And somewhere in the dark, another Sweet, another prisoner, waited for a sign. The sign had come. The woman in Suite 11 was no longer alone. The sirens faded into the distance. The hallway stood silent once more. The door of Suite 11, once sealed like a tomb of secrets, now stood wide open, letting in the dawn light that had not touched its walls in years. She stood there no longer hidden, no longer afraid. The woman in Suite 11 had a name again, and this time the world would hear it. Her silence had been her shield. Her story had been her prison. But truth had become her freedom. They said no one would believe her. They said she'd be forgotten. But her voice had turned whispers into waves, and now no one could ignore her. Detective Mason closed his notebook and looked her in the eyes. One last time, you were never just a victim, he said. You were the witness the world needed. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just walked away. Her steps. Hotel was never the same again. Suite 11 was sealed, permanently. But the truth walked free. And somewhere in a world that never listened, someone finally heard her.